This is All the Things with Michelle Wolf.
Hey guys, welcome to All the Things with Michelle Wolf. I'm here today with Valerie Rubin, and this is like episode 3 in our mixtape series, our Behind the Music series, where we're talking to the authors, co-collaborators on this project. So Val, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Michelle, for the beautiful, warm welcome. I am Valerie Rubin. I'm an anxious attachment specialist and trauma-informed somatic coach. I help people heal their anxious attachment style so they can become a match for healthy, secure love.
Oh, I love it. And I kind of forget like how we even got connected through this project. But one of the things that I think we had already connected through the All the Things podcast.
Yes,
That's right.
I was on your podcast.
And then, well, I knew that, but then like yeah. So, and then I put the call out for collaborators, and you were just like, hey, and I love the song that you chose, Imagine Dragons, Demons, because that is a song that like really stuck with me too for similar reasons. And I remember like the first time that song really hit for me, like I had this moment of realization, like, we all have this, and instead of like fighting that, it just like all came around for me, this like big epiphany on like being able to like sit with my demons, as the saying goes, like invite them to tea and get to know like what they're about. And you talk a lot in your chapter about, and in your work too, like the somatic healing aspect of that. Do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would love to talk more about somatic healing and more about the science of that. So I'll just use like a personal example that I've been like processing and integrating. So, I would say I'm a bit more anxious leaning and have developed a more secure attachment style. But what this has looked like for me and what has shown up is this like abandonment anxiety. Like I had a conflict with a friend last week, and I was just like waiting on the edge of my seat, anxious, feeling so much stress in my body. Like no matter what people were telling me, people would tell me, don't worry about it. If she's your friend, it'll work out. Even if you're having conflict, like she'll listen to you, like it's okay. My nervous system didn't care. Like
And
it was
you logically know that, right? Like we can even agree logically, but it's
yes,
in the body where it's
it
happening.
is. It is. You can't talk your way out of anxiety or an anxious response or a panic attack. And so that is why I'm so deeply passionate about somatic healing and somatic therapy, especially for people who are anxious leaning or struggle with mental health issues or mental health. I don't even like to say the word issues, mental health struggles, because like Michelle said, with the song Demons and why I picked it is because the lead guitarist really chose to sing this song because of his own struggles with suicide ideation, depression, anxiety. And he said in a concert when I saw him live, like, please, for everyone struggling, please reach out to a therapist, get help, talk to someone. But it's also not just about talking, it's about having all of our parts be seen and heard without shame or judgment. It's about, and that's when we can actually feel safe to go into our bodies, because trauma and anxiety start to happen when we've been shamed, when we've been punished, when we've been ridiculed for having big emotions. And so then, of course, if those emotions aren't resolved, then we create that inner critic or harshness on our emotions. And then, of course, we cannot regulate what we have not been allowed to feel. So then, of course, someone will be chronically anxious because we have learned that we are safe when we're in our mind and disconnected from our body, because what's happening in our body is too overwhelming. So the science of somatic healing is the body remembers everything that we have experienced. So one of the somatic modalities that I specialize in is called brain spotting. So brain spotting helps to locate where your trauma memories are stored and helps to release them and process them. So that way in your relationships or, you know, in day-to-day life, you might not be as triggered by your boss, by your friends, by your partner. Yeah, so that's really what somatic healing is all about and why I'm so passionate about it.
So two things. When you were talking about like the anxiety and suppressing and all that, and that's when we end up perpetuating that trauma on other people that we love and care about often. And then the second thing I was going to say was when we had our session, I definitely remember because I'm such an analytical processor person. I can like get stuck in loops and always wanting to like figure it out. And you know, life is a puzzle. And it doesn't always need to be solved. Like I have to come to that sometimes, even with my own, you know, like when you have trauma that is in your early childhood. And so you wonder like, okay, when you try to figure it out, like, okay, you want to always get to the root, right? Sometimes you can't. And I remember like having to accept that at one point, like no amount of digging, even if I wanted to do hypnosis and do regression therapy, like at what point is enough, like enough investigation, you know, like, and that's the beauty of our bodies too, is that you don't always need to trace it back. I mean, certainly I think it's good to get to the root if you can, but sometimes you really maybe can't get like a clear answer. And so can you accept that and like from here make the choice to move on and then retrain your brain, retrain your body and your nervous system. And that's like a practice. Like, but I'm looking at that lately as like, okay, this is my new loop. If I'm gonna loop
Yes.
on something, like let it be these things, you know.
I love that point that you mentioned. And there's so many things I want to add here because for one, like we might think logically that like we need to get to some root, but even just for example, if you have a big sensation about something, you have a big feeling in your body, that's usually not coming from what we can logically understand. That's what preverbal trauma is. So if you're from 0 to 3 years old and you've experienced trauma, you have no cognitive language available in your brain yet. So what ends up happening is if you have a big sensation or feeling or emotion and you're like, what's happening here? That could be happening because of preverbal trauma. And
Yeah.
so, yes. And I'm also a hypnotherapist. And I think regression can be great, but I also, that's why I love brain spotting because other people process things different. Some people are more deep feelers where I just feel this sensation in my body and it's loud and I just need to be with it. Our bodies just need to be with the sensations without shame and judgment.
Yeah.
And intellectualizing, needing to know why or get to the answer, that's also a protector part, shielding us from that pain because it feels so big. We're like, I just want an answer. And that's also so human.
I know.
Want that as well. Like all of our protectors are so loving. They're just trying to help our younger selves not feel shame, not good enoughness, loneliness, feelings of not being important. Like, can we have reverence and unconditional love and learn to step into loving these parts of us that we've held so much shame around? What if we could just loosen that grip of shame, even 1%?
I call those my exiled parts. And I've really, like in the last couple of years, I've just really learned to embrace all those parts of me. You know, like my shame girl, I would call her. You know, like she gets invited in, you know, like she's a part of who I am. And I think because I have been able to come to that place within myself, and it was through a lot of like mirroring that happened in relationships, right? That does give me this like, I have to walk a fine line sometimes with over empathizing with other people because I can totally see why they're doing what they're doing, you know, whatever from my limited perspective, you know, what all of that. But, and I'm like, oh, I get that like they're in a lot of pain or they obviously have trauma, even if they don't want to acknowledge it. And so I end up being very like caring and giving. And I've had to like draw, not that I'm never going to be caring, but like I have to draw a line for myself in that it's okay also for me not to put myself in harm's way, you know?
Absolutely. There's such a fine line there between being overly empathetic, because as a child, if you've experienced neglect or you've had an emotionally unavailable parent, you learn that your needs are either inconsistently met or not met at all. So then you have an increased capacity for discomfort, for that unavailability, and that wires your nervous system to associate that with safety. And so then that shows up as like, oh, I can see that they're in pain. Like, I see that it's coming from their avoidant attachment. But I don't care what trauma you have. It's about two people working on their baggage and unpacking it together and making sure that we're co-creating a safe space. And it also comes down to compatibility. Not everyone knows how to collaborate in that safe space based on their resources, based on their nervous system capacity, like where they are at. And so it's just holding that nuance of both of, I can love you deeply and see that you're in a lot of pain, and maybe we aren't a good fit in this moment to be in relation with each other.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that like in times like that, it just takes a lot of acceptance. You know, and then so I have so many things underlined, so I want to speak on them. And by the way, this is the book, Mixtape Memories, and this is, let's see, you're in the first chapter. You're like pretty close in there. Yeah, you're the second chapter in. And this is all part of part one. I called this The Journey Within, exploring self-discovery, healing, and personal growth. And I mean, I feel like your whole chapter was about that, like the part where you talk about, now you talk a couple times about Dan Reynolds and things that he shared. And I love, so I grew up on VH1 Behind the Music, like learning about, you know, the various artists, musicians, and their stories, which were often filled with, you know, trauma and challenges, like real challenges and things that like I wasn't facing at all in my life. And you look at that and you go, I think it really gave me this sense of, and you said it in here too, like that if somebody like him or them can go through that and like be who they are, first of all, it makes you feel less alone, but then you feel like validated and seen in this other person's experience, which is why I share the way that I do. Because and I think you too, because you know, people see themselves in our stories and they're like, yeah, no, I know. And oh my God, like it's not just me.
Absolutely. I think that's why social media is also so powerful, and like hearing these stories from everyone in our book and going deeper into every single chapter, the soul behind the words. Within that, when you can hear someone's story, it almost removes your shame.
Yes.
Like if they can do that with everything they have went through, maybe I can show up too. Maybe this gives me permission that if they have been able to find peace and they've been able to cultivate a healthier relationship with themselves despite their circumstances, maybe I can too. And that was a lot of my intention of writing my chapter, because people also look at me and think like she must have zero anxiety or zero mental health struggles. And even like I notice a part of me is like uncomfortable with saying that, but like I still struggle at times, and it also doesn't need to be my identity. People say I'm such an anxious person. I don't believe that. You just have high levels of anxiety because of what's going on in your life, because of your programming, because of like trauma. Like that's also not who you are. Like you can still struggle at times and still you are still worthy and enough. Like I was literally in a brain spotting session for myself earlier, and I was looking at my brother's cat, and she's kind of moody. Like she's feisty. Like she gives 0 F's, okay? And this gal is so spicy and feisty, right? But I love her and my brother loves her. And it's like, if we can love animals despite, their moodiness or quirks, like, what about us humans are different? Like, we all have things going on, and that's what makes you more relatable. Trying to be perfect is just so exhausting. And what even is perfect? Like, there's no such thing.
I think like the answer that came to me when you were saying that is I think we make allowances for our pets, but like with other people, because it's nuanced, but like I feel like when somebody is making a judgment about you, I mean, it's really coming from like their own place of wherever, insecurity, whatever, not wanting to look at, like, to not want to look in the mirror themselves. Like that's what I find anyway. Like people who are more judgy or, will make like sort of negative criticisms about others. It's like, or not be patient with others or expect perfectionism. It's really like their own stuff.
If I have accepted my parts, maybe I have an impatient part, maybe I have a imperfection, perfectionistic part, whatever parts, whatever parts that I have, I have a like overworking part, right? Whatever part that you have that maybe you carry shame around. If someone else is judging you for that, they haven't you are their mirror and they haven't accepted that within themselves.
Yeah.
And someone even said to me recently, I feel like, Valerie, like you don't fully trust yourself, and like that makes me not trust you. But like, no, that's just coming from your judgment of me and my process. And this is one of my cognitive distortions, is I can look in extremes or black and white. And like when even they said that, I was like, well, I do trust myself and blah, 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 blah. But it's just, if you have accepted that within yourself, that maybe I haven't fully embodied self-trust 1,000 or 100%. Maybe if I don't accept that in myself, like I have to judge that about you.
And I think sometimes I enjoy when somebody, will share a projection because I get to try that on and I'm like, because I'm usually not like immediately resistant. I'm willing to like run it through the filters, So I'm like, okay, is there something true here? Am I not looking at something? And
absolutely.
But sometimes you do know right away. Like you're like, no, that's not my truth. Like I'll still investigate it because I'm like, ooh, I'm really feel resistant to that, I wonder why. But like ultimately I do feel like we know. And like when somebody's saying something that's like not true, you're like, no, I know. When you start to really know who you are, you can just none of that stuff, like you just don't take it in anymore.
Yes, you're not taking it in so personally.
You're like, okay, you can have that opinion if you want.
Absolutely.
One of the things so in your book, in your chapter, you say, the old belief that success equals happiness shattered. True happiness isn't found in external accomplishments, it comes from within. You talk about the struggles that once felt isolating were in reality shared by so many. And I wrote there, shame dissolves when it's shared in safe places. And I think that's why music is such a beautiful, like universal language to express things like shame, because it's such a deep, vulnerable, exposing topic, right? Like to feel that and whatever. And I think that music is a really good medium to like touch those places and allow yourself to process that.
It's such a great co-regulator. And that's a big lesson that I continuously come back to, like a soul level lesson of my success or my business or whatever happens externally is not the key to my safety, is not the key to my happiness. Because in my household, I grew up in a Jewish household, they very much respected and praised people who made a lot of money, people who owned businesses, people who got and received a lot of education. I was fed the narrative that you just need to get married, have kids, get a great job, make a lot of money, and you're going to be okay. And I've worked with hundreds of women, very successful women, that it doesn't matter how successful their business is or what their life looks on the outside. Nothing will heal you from the outside if what's internal is bleeding and begging for your attention.
I mean, myself, like I grew up here, like getting that message too. I grew up, I mean, I would call it like more of a single parent household, but that was really like when I was younger. I mean, but I grew up with that idea of like, I want to be a strong, independent woman. I don't want to depend on a man. I need to take care of myself. And in doing that, that it always meant having enough money, having health care, you know what I mean? Like and, you know, getting married, having a partner. But it like, there was no idea of like, well, how do you actually do that? And how do you give to that? Like, because we talked earlier about like, you've got two people, but the relationship is a container. And it's its own entity in and of itself. And it needs love and care and consistency and tending to. And I feel like, you know, for what it's worth, but I grew up with a lot of examples of like not doing that. And also not tending to myself, but like being critical of myself and hard on myself. Like no one is harder on me than I am, you know? So, although I feel like I'm turning that around. So.
And that inner critic, that's another protector part. It's just a part of you that internalized someone else's negative perceptions on you.
Yeah.
Like Michelle, I believe you have 2 kids, is that right?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Like you look at your children when they were born and when they're young, and I know they're pretty young-ish, you know. And so it's like you would never be like, you're not good enough. You would never say these harsh words to them from what I know about you. You're so loving and so kind, and you're just such a sweetheart.
Oh, and I care about their self-concept, and I want them to, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's just like we would never say those things to a child. And so it's just things that we've internalized from society, from the media, from our parents. And I just find it so sad. But if it's something that we can learn, we can also unlearn it as well.
Oh, I love that. I mean, and I think that's the beauty of being on a growth journey, is a lot of it has been for me like not even it's just a remembering. Mm-hmm. Like when I strip away the conditioning, you know, or the things that have come at me from external forces, and you just kind of like when you can find your way back to yourself without all that stuff, you know, that place of purity, like when I can feel it now. It just feels really good to be there. And and you know, I love what you said earlier about like even at this time and place in my life, with the level of self-awareness that I have, with the training that I've done, with all the education about all these things, like I struggle, you know, and I share that. Like I probably haven't shared how much I've struggled with some things lately, but I know that when I get to a place of being able to talk about it, I will, you know, because I know how much other people struggle too, and how much it meant to me to like share in somebody else's experience. It's like when we see each other in the struggle, but we also see each other in the healing. You know, I think just being that and being the example of that can be really powerful. I feel like that's the ripple effect that I can put out there. It's that you're not alone. And I'm so aware too that like part of why I must want to do that is because I must have felt very alone. And so that's my way of showing up in the world for people who might feel that.
Like to me, that's so pure. Like that's coming from your soul. That's coming from that space of I have remembered and come back to remembering my own love for myself. So I want to share that with the world and help others not feel so alone. And that's really where I'm at, especially people who struggle with anxiety and anxious attachment. Like I'm in different Facebook groups for anxious attachment for research purposes and just to see where people are at. And holy moly, so much shame is going on in there. I even read a post today where someone was saying, I struggle. My partner messages me like 4 times a day, but I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel as if, what if I'm just too anxious for a secure relationship? All of these stories. And so many people were just saying, just continue working on yourself. And while that's amazing, and yes, we need to do that internal work, it's like, what if I can be safe and loved for all of me? Like, what if I get to be loved for all my parts? The
Yeah.
dysregulated parts, the messy parts, my ADHD part that forgets a lot of things and struggles. Like, I just really want to bring that compassion to people because it's just like, we're all the same. We're all the same. And I
Well,
want
even
people to feel that love from within and come back to that remembering, like you said, because when you strip down those layers, that's who you are. It's a remembrance. It's not really learning anything.
especially, because if I was going to classify myself, I used to say, oh, I'm definitely anxious, but actually what I've come to learn is like, I would probably identify more with like disorganized because I can see where I'm avoidant too. Like now that I've had that mirror experience, I'm like, oh, ugh, and really it's like one of the things that I loved learning was anxious attachment, or when you lean anxious, it's really like an avoidance with yourself versus like the
100%.
opposite of like being avoidant is really like you're actually anxious too, but you're avoiding the other person. And
Yes.
neither is healthy in a relationship because you need to be able to come together and do the hard thing. But learning that like kind of set me free one day. I was like, oh my God, that means that I need to sit with myself and I have to do this even though it's painful. But I mean, in being able to do that, I've really come to like love who I am. And I love my time with myself. And now, if I enter a relationship again someday, like it'll be from this place of, I don't really need anything from you. Not that I think that we shouldn't need from each other. Like I do think our needs are valid and we do need connection. But like, I don't need you to make me whole. I don't need you to fill a void, I don't, and I'd really like to not have relationships that are mirroring those the wounded parts of me. But if that's what's happening, that must be what I need to see. I think you talk about that too, that like the parts within us that get suppressed, they will come out, whether it's, I forget the quote, something about like, well, you actually shared it. It was a quote from somebody. Let me see. A powerful quote from hypnotherapist Marissa Peer. The feeling that cannot find its expression in tears may cause other organs to weep. I mean, sickness, autoimmune disease, but even depression, to me, that's like a brain body dis-ease, So all of that, like it's going to find its way out one way or another.
And I want to share 2 things. One about that quote, and 2 about the spectrum of attachment styles. I am an anxious attachment specialist, but I actually hate using labels on people. Like, it can be helpful to be like, okay, here are my patterns, and like that's a first step for people, but people usually stop there. They're like, oh, I'm anxious leaning, or I'm avoidant, or I'm disorganized, and then they stop there and they're like, well, this is why but that's not doing anything. That's just describing what's happening.
Yeah.
Where did we learn that I need to overfunction? Where did I learn that my worth is conditional? Where did I learn that my safety is not coming from within? It's only coming from others. Like, all of these things are so important to recognize. And with relationships, and I'm so glad you added that caveat of, being a mirror, because it can look so uncomfortable and feel so uncomfortable when someone's mirroring back all your stuff. And even if you're so healed, even if you get in your first secure attached relationship, your healthiest relationship, all your stuff is going to come up because your body's finally feeling safe to release it and to come up. So there's nothing wrong with it. Like, our relational wounds are going to brush up against each other. Like my best friend and I, we've had a bit of more conflict recently, like as we get closer and like we're going to be moving together and making a big shift together. And our wounds directly correlate with one another and they smack each other right in the face, both. And so we just can't avoid relational healing or individual healing. We need disconfirming experiences and we need to learn tools to help us feel safe in our body. It's both.
It's awesome when you have people that are willing and able to do that dance with you. And you're right, I'm hearing you. I know that I can't avoid relationships that are gonna trigger me.
Which sucks. It sucks. Like it doesn't feel good. Like honoring that too. Like the human experience can feel so uncomfortable.
And that's why, like, even in, you know, I mean, a lot of my chapters are about the pain and heartbreak that I went through in, you know, a particular relationship that was painful and highly triggering, but it also, like, and partly being this more self-aware, more evolved person than I was before, I was much better able to navigate all of that, what felt like drama and chaos, you know, versus like in the past where I would have like participated in it and like succumbed to it and like let it, you know, I mean, it's still, it feels like it still wrecked me in certain ways, but I also, like, I have such a, for real, deep gratitude for everything I learned, like for everything that it showed me. I was really willing to look this time. I don't think, I mean, not like in the past, like that I didn't, I was always willing to look at myself, but like this time I was like, okay, like I could speak it, you know, I could feel my self-protective nature coming up and I'm like, okay, thank you for, I would thank my anxiety for showing me and trying to protect me. Cause really it's trying to protect you, you know? And so, cause you were saying that earlier, like if people could just, like, what if we just accepted these, like, and love these parts of ourselves? So I really flipped the script on being frustrated with myself. And I'm saying this and I know that I still need to do this because I do find myself going, I'm still here, but like that's just part of the journey. And it is, you have to come back to it and be like, okay, I'm here, you know? And we talked about like the beauty of being able to look back and go, but I might be here, but I didn't stay there very long. You know, this time, what did I do differently? You know, this time it didn't feel like dying inside.
Or maybe it didn't feel like dying inside for 12 hours. Maybe it
Right.
for 11 hours, right? Like, and even if it was like, just let our hearts just crack the fuck open because
Yeah.
that's what life is about. And there's no judgment. Like I can experience judgment around my own stuff too because I'm also human. But it's so easy for me to not judge others at all. But it's also something that I continuously remind myself. And each time I remind myself, like, Valerie, drop the judgment. It is okay. And usually when I feel that, I'll place my hand on my heart and I'll get emotional. And it's like our parts just want to feel safe. The anxiety just wants to protect us. Like, we're so human. And like, what if that was okay that we struggle? And that means that we're human and alive and normal. Like my friend was telling me, just using again on the anxiety piece, she completed her master's in industrial organizational psychology and I'm so proud of her. And she did this compositional exam. So it was everything she learned and it sounded extremely complex and difficult. And she had to retake it and you can only retake it a certain amount of times and you have to take it, you can't take it more than like once a year or something like that. And so she was like, Valerie, I felt so stressed. I literally got sick. I feel like maybe I need to be medicated for that. And there's nothing wrong with medication. I'm like, I am so proud of you for doing what you feel is right and giving that support. And it's like, that's so normal. Like I would feel that way too if I had this huge exam around like that, like how the test was formatted. I would feel anxious too. And it's like, what if that was okay And that part of you just wants you to succeed and not to fail and wants to feel good enough and celebrate it. Like, what if that was okay?
Yeah. And for so many reasons, our system can get activated. I mean, and I'm somebody that like I try to go, I understand that like the food that I put in my body has a lot to do with, my mental health, my gut health, and it's all talks to each other. I get that. And I am somebody that, I do look for like natural ways to do things, but sometimes like what's going on in your body where, and I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 43 and starting perimenopause. So like, then you add on stuff like that and it's like then it's like a whole new script that you don't even know. You didn't get to read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's happening in my body? Like sometimes it does. And we need, like like a month ago, I was having heart palpitations. Like I'm very in tune with my body and I can feel when something is off. And my heart was like doing this thing where it was like almost like skipping a beat and then doing this like drop in my chest. And it ended up being PVCs. I did go to the doctor, because it was happening like multiple times in a week, a lot in a day. And first of all, I appreciate that my doctor didn't just, laugh, like kind of laugh, because I come in there and I'm like, I know enough about anatomy for doctors to look at me and think she thinks she knows, but I don't. I just can I can understand enough where I can ask questions, so I'm like, my heart's doing this thing. And she put me on a beta blocker. I can't remember what it's called, propofol or something, propranolol, something like that, but it blocks adrenaline uptake in your body. And it's like, when you have been living in that state of fight or flight, whatever, all this time in your body, even when you're in a safe place, like you're right, like your body starts to like sometimes bring it all to the surface. And it just took like a couple of weeks of being on that to kind of, she was like, and I think this will be good for your anxiety too. Because she knows, I mean, she's like, if you're willing to take it, I appreciate how thoughtful she is. And she's so willing to answer my questions and curiosities and all the things. And it helped me just enough to kind of like get my body back to like a balanced place, like it's not always forever. There doesn't have to be shame involved in that. Like I just needed some extra support.
Yes. And I'm so glad you got that support. Like we're so human. And especially when things are going on with our bodies, we're like, what the actual F is that? Like it's scary. And there's always a benefit analysis to it, right? And it's like, gosh, if I can have extra support, why not take it? Like what how is it helpful for me to shame myself when I'm already going through a hard time? Like, what if I could just let myself have
yeah,
support?
like we're saying in the anxiety groups, like that's what people end up doing, and then they make it like worse for themselves. And so like you might be in that state where like your heart is racing, and I've had panic attacks, and it's like then if you're like shaming yourself or disappointed in yourself on top of that, like that only increases cortisol and stress in your body. So like you're just pouring on more to what you're already carrying. And that's what I would love for people to be able to see is if we can stop doing that. And I know that's easier said than done, but just like kind of like troubleshoot, like where you're at in the moment and go, okay, like what am I feeling? Take a breath. And also breath work. I can't say enough about the power of the breath to like bring life and calm your body down.
Absolutely. I love breath work. I think it's fantastic. And with that, of what you mentioned around, yeah, like ultimately shaming yourself for having these big things or panic attacks, what has been one of the most helpful things that I've learned is any big, I'm saying big in quotes, any big reaction that your body is having, like an emotional reaction, it's not coming from your true adult self. It's coming from a younger part of you. And so it's like if you can just be like, whoa, this is a big reaction, because your true adult self, when you're connected to that, you feel calm, you feel regulated, like possibilities are available. I can handle anything that comes my way. That's coming from your true adult self. But when we feel those big emotions, it's just when it feels so big, it's coming from a younger part of you that's
yeah. And that's what makes me so sad about how, you know, like generation after generation, like just perpetuating like trauma on their children. And I get like that a lot of times, like I'm not making excuses for it, but I get that it comes from often like a very unconscious place, and you know, things that they've learned that they've passed down or whatever. But I feel like I'm not sure that any of us got out of our childhood unscathed. And therefore, and like, you know, psychologically, we know that, you know, the time of that trauma, like you can kind of get stuck there, you know? So when you're acting from that place, you're really like, what was the book when my son was growing up and he was having like temper tantrums? I think it's oh, it talks about like the brain and like the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. I'll have to, it's a book. I hate that I can't, I was like on the tip of my tongue. I have it over there, but I'm not gonna get it.
Okay.
But like, yeah, so it just helped me to understand, like when you're operating from that space, if I can get to like an observer place or be the witness, right? Like that's when my adult self can kind of like step back. And that's what I started to do with him as like a child throwing a temper tantrum. I just kind of like let him have his space to have that, you know? And my counselor, mentor, friend, who actually wrote the foreword in our book, Tamara, she talks about like letting yourself have that like let yourself have it. Like your adult self have the temper tantrum.
Yeah. Let it, literally, absolutely. That's what I've had to learn. If not, it just stays stuck in your body and then you're stuck there. And it's like, it is okay. It is okay to feel all the things.
The Whole Brain Child, that's what it was. That's the book. It's a great book for anybody that wants to understand child behavior, challenging behaviors, things like that. It just gives you such a, but also like it helped me probably more as the parent, you know, being like, oh, I'm in my downstairs brain when I'm getting mad at my 4-year-old. You know what I mean?
That is such a helpful like analogy. Absolutely. And like parenting is also such a big trigger. It's like anything that your child, like they're such a mirror. It's like that would, it's like relationships can be triggering, life can be triggering, but also like how beautiful is life? We're on this floating rock in space. Floating, like we're made of 70% water. We're basically cucumbers rolling around on Earth in this little ball. Like, what if we can also have fun with this? Something else that I've learned that's been so helpful in my journey, and if I don't incorporate some of it, I can feel heavy, and because I can go too much into my trauma work. So it's also learning how to hold the good stuff, learning to expand your nervous system. This could look like a glimmer, okay? What they call glimmers, finding the small things. Maybe it's your matcha latte you drink in the morning, or you feel that sunlight on your face for 30 seconds, or your cat comes up to you when they're running toward the door. Like these little things. What do I notice in my body when my cat comes up to me on my chest? And savoring in that moment for just a second, for 10 seconds. It's getting our body used to a new familiar, expanding our nervous system. That what if it's safe? Because if we have experienced trauma, we also need to expand into new possibilities and show our body that we are in a new identity, and that means also feeling differently. And so when you're utilizing those things with expanding our nervous system and, you know, noticing what would my secure adult self feel good doing today? What would feel good for me? What do I envision the secure version of me doing every day? I used to say higher self, and I actually stopped using that term. I more use like true self or true adult self now, because it's like people say, and it's so marketed, like becoming her, your higher self. And it's almost like, it's like, oh, I'm reaching, like I'm not there yet. But it's like, no, like you're always connected to that. It's like, what about my true self?
Somebody that I used to work with, he used to say, he would bring in like your wise older self. And I always loved that because you can kind of like visualize her, you know, or him. And what they look like, but also like what life they're living. And then, you know, how do they feel? Like, what are they feeling in your body? And if you can tap into that, I feel connected to that because I know that's like a trajectory, you know? Yeah. Oh my gosh. All that parts work. It's so important. And connecting with all of those parts, like connecting your wise older self with like your child self, you know, letting them hold hands.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's see. I want to make sure I covered everything. Oh, I did want to touch on. So you said the ego insists that happiness will come after something is achieved. The soul, however, knows the truth. Once peace is found within, everything else will fall into place. And I feel like that's so much of like what that song, like that's where I got to when I heard that song and it really sunk in for me.
I feel that in my heart as you're saying it. And it's like, wow, that quote really does. It wasn't even my quote fully. I quoted from someone else, I believe, but I think so. From
that one's yours.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But I love that. I love when we like write something and somebody's like, oh, so you said this, and you're like, that came out of me.
Yeah, I literally had like a mindfuck moment for a second because I was like, wow, but that was really coming from my soul. Like that's really a soul lesson that I come back to every time, really. It's like, and that's really what anxiety and anxious attachment, the lie that our brain will tell us. Once this person changes, then I'll feel okay. Once I get the $10,000 months, then I'll feel secure. All of these lies that our brain tells us that keeps us disconnected from the embodied safety that we can have right here in this moment.
And with that, I think that's a good place to remind everybody. I think there's a story in this book for everyone, no matter what you're going through. I feel like stories of triumph, stories of understanding who you are on a deeper level. You know, there's heartbreak, there's some humor in there, there's lots of love. So Mixtape Memories is available. It comes out June 10th on Amazon. You get it in paperback. I do have a pre-order going on, although I don't know if by the time I get this out it'll be valid. But right now the pre-order is you get the signed copy of the book and a complimentary digital workbook. Now that digital workbook will be available after it goes on sale, but I think it'll be something like $3.99. But I think it's such a great like small little addition if you're interested in, you know, kind of like looking at your own playlist and what songs you've been singing your whole life that really stayed with you and what that might mean or whatever. So I think there's good stuff in there for everyone. So get your copy, and I would love to hear, you know, from people what songs really touched them. And thank you, Val, for being on here with me. It was so good to talk with you. I always love our conversations.
Oh, me too. And thank you for like allowing me to collaborate in the book. It's so special to be a co-author of a book, and it's special. Like what I wrote really was from my heart and from my soul. And for those listening, the book is about each person who has a chapter. Like Michelle has a few chapters, but I believe everyone else has one. And so each person has cultivated and chosen a song that has meant the most to them, and they talk about how that has impacted their life. So that's why I chose Demons by Imagine Dragons, because I'm so passionate about supporting people and just my own journey with mental health. So this was so much more from the heart, a little bit less on education for my chapter, and it was just more about sharing the truth about anxiety and mental health and the internal struggles that we go through. So thank you so much, Michelle, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for, you know, just keeping it real, for being willing to go there. You know, I really like in reading your chapter and the things that I was working through in my life, like I benefited from reading it. I hope other people do too. And please feel free to share, you know, if anybody's interested in diving more into somatic work or hypnotherapy or their attachment or anything, where they can find you.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram, My handle is Heal with Val, HEAL with Val. Or I have my podcast called the Anxiety Recovery Podcast by Val Rubin. Michelle, I don't think you've been on my podcast. I'd love to have you on as well. Just wanted to
Yeah,
add
I'm
it out
totally
there.
down for it. We can continue that conversation and get into more stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
All right, everybody, like and subscribe, and thank you for being here. I hope you like the book.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of All the Things.